Lisa, as we mentioned in the intro, we're really, really excited to have you on today. You're one of the incredible women that we get to talk to and explore. Your story is incredible. Your personal story, how that's translated into business, into finding a way that you can do business that you love, that you're passionate. There's this theme of holistic health and well-being. And the way that really translated to disrupting a way of working, disrupting business as we knew it, because you were doing this remote team business and running it before it was the norm.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'd love to kick off with what was the cycle that you had to break when you were running a remote team, building a remote business, and it was met with such skepticism? It was so rare at that time. What was that cycle you had to break to, I guess, even take that first step, let alone lead it to succeed?
Thank you, Nikki. That's a really good question. Thanks for having me, Nikki and Ness, by the way. Such a privilege to be here. Look, this happened a long time ago, nearly 20 years ago now. And there was a fork in the road for me. There was a health challenge. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It made me question a lot of things. I was working in corporate at the time, and I was on the daily grind, I guess you could say. And so it led me to think about life in general, and what was important to me and the things that I wanted to achieve and do. And I think sometimes, I think a lot of the time, if we're faced with a health challenge or a shock, where you think you're actually going to die, it does cause you to think twice about what you're doing with your life and how you're spending your time, and are you making a difference? And I didn't want to be on that 9-to-5 grind anymore. And it was a real mindset shift for me and I think that's probably the key. It is a mindset thing for people who are embarking on it, and business leaders who are considering it. But I must say that when I first started out, I wasn't really intending on building a reasonable size business around this model. I just started out because it was something that was a personal challenge that I was facing, and I wanted for myself. But then I realized that it was such a good thing that I wanted to be able to offer it to other people. And I realized also that there were a lot of clinicians out there. I'm an occupational therapist by trade. There were a lot of clinicians out there that also weren't being offered flexible work options. And so they were sitting at home waiting for their maternity leave to end, or they were forced to wait for their full-time positions to kick back in while they were pursuing their family roles, having children and looking after their families, or aging parents, or whatever the demands for them at that time were. So I realized there's a lot of experience sitting at home, actually quite idle, and I wanted to tap into that. And it worked to my advantage, because there were a lot of people out there that were willing to have a go, and they really wanted the flexibility going forward for themselves. And so I was then able to grow the business around this remote model. And there was a lot of skepticism at the time, because we were working for major insurers, and they didn't know if they were going to get consistency of service from us, having a contractor-based remote model, which then forced me to put policies and procedures and systems in place to be able to not only provide the service that we wanted to provide, which was of course a quality service, but also to give our customers the assurance that what they were going to receive was a consistent product and service from us. And that's sort of how it grew.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because fast forward, if this all started about 19, 20 years ago, fast forward to pandemic, when all of business was going into remote learning and remote working, whilst education, every part of our world went online. What was that like for you to sit back and observe the rest of the world catching up on what you had already implemented and had the hiccups and the learnings from? And how did you notice what happened for other people through that time?
I think there was a sense of chaos and panic. Everything was a bit hickledy-pickledy, suck it and see, a lot of trial and error. just running by the seat of your pants sort of mentality. It's only going to be short term. We'll just do what we have to do in the short term to make this work. And there was a real sense of, for me, I guess, well, I've been doing this for such a long time, and I could see that people were struggling with the concept. And I thought to myself, well, wouldn't that be a really neat way for me to be able to contribute to those businesses that are now offering more flexible work options, to be able to teach people how to do this effectively, shortcut all the pitfalls that I went through, and just provide that support and that mentoring to business leaders who are leading remote teams, because it is a very different style of leadership. And I think there's been some hesitancy to continue to adopt this way of working, particularly with the pull back to the office that seems to be occurring more and more now. But I think the workforce has shifted, and there's certainly more demand for flexible work options in the workforce in general. And I think people need to catch up now, and I'm happy to really support them in doing that.
It's almost like if they're not already doing it, they're already left behind. What I find really inspiring about this conversation, Lisa, is that Ness and I are always talking about how do we release the expectation of how we should do business. And you've done exactly that. And now you're helping other businesses do that. And what I'm really curious, there's a couple of things I'm really curious about here is, one of them is, what is the definition of remote working? Like, how has that actually changed over the last 20 years? Remote working 20 years ago, does that look different to today?
I believe so. Oh, look, back when I first started, we didn't have the technology that we have now. So if you can imagine, it was pretty archaic in its format, and we had to overcome different barriers back then to what we do now. We now have Zoom, which is absolutely incredible. Back then that didn't exist. So we were probably meeting more face-to-face on a more regular basis back then, because even though you're working remotely, we're still people. We still need each other. We still need that personal contact, particularly coming from a health professional background. We're very people-oriented professionals, and we love being with people, but at the end of the day, everyone's human, right? And we all still need that person-to-person contact, and it's not only on a screen, which is great, it's very convenient, but it doesn't fulfill every need that we have as people and as professionals. So it's still great to get in the room with people, right? And I think COVID presented that sudden break from person-to-person contact, and it was probably throwing the baby out with the bathwater a bit, but we were forced into that situation. But it certainly, I think, led to the evolution of my business in terms of being able to adopt more Zoom meetings in between our face-to-face meetings, which led to more efficiencies and less travel time, and that sort of thing. So definitely technology's had a major part to play in what the remote workforce looks like now compared to when I first started.
You mentioned about, a lot of the change for you came from a mindset shift. What would you say you see for business owners who are looking, or even their teams could be asking for remote work, or it could be about just keeping ahead of the trend, or being able to be an attractive employer to other people? What's the mindset shift or the barrier that you see leaders have right now when it comes to creating this environment in their workplace where they can allow their teams to work remotely?
There's probably a few things there, Ness. Really good question. I think there's some fear of loss of control, perhaps. You're not seeing people face to face. You're used to leading that way. You're used to having the eyeballs on people, and it's sort of like once they sort of leave the building, you don't have that sense of control. You're not actually observing them working, so you don't know what they're up to from one minute to the next. There's a sense of, you really do have to trust people, and it's building that trust into those relationships, and getting to know people on a different level, I think, because we take a lot for granted being in the office together. You have those natural conversations that, you know, they call them water cooler moments, or in, you know, while you're making a cup of tea in the tea room, those conversations don't occur. So it's actually having to be more intentional about making those connections with people and getting to know people, despite not having the spontaneity of those conversations in the office. So I've found that I've had to invest time and energy into getting to know my people from a distance, and still be able to maintain relationships with them, and still know what's going on in their lives and the struggles that they're having. And you know, we're all people, we all have lives, and that's one of the things I really like about this model, is that it enables people to still engage in their lives. They're not tied to an office environment. But I think that is a really important component of leading a remote team, is still having those points of connection with your team, and putting systems and people in place that can still keep people connected to each other. So that engagement that then fuels motivation, that then fuels productivity. So there's a flow-on effect there. If people start to feel disengaged, they don't feel motivated to do their work, they don't get themselves to their desk, and then productivity starts to nosedive. So they're all interconnected.
Absolutely. I remember back during COVID, some of the work that I was doing with clients, leaders and teams, was around DISC profiling, which is the behavioural profile styles. And what was some of that was really helping them understand, based on their profile, how working alone was impacting them. So for some styles who are actually very introverted and like to not be interrupted and are very happy working in their own space, some of them thrived in that and were upset by having to do group Zoom calls to say hello to everyone. I just want to get on with my work.
No, what a hassle, right?
I know. I don't want to connect to people. Why is my boss ringing me? Then other people who are really way more, have a higher need for that personal contact, are driven by connection. They really struggled because it was a loss of connection for them, but for some it was a loss of significance because they're just sitting in a space on their own. So having come through that and worked with people and seen it from that perspective of all the different styles at play, and then add on top of that, we're humans and we've got stuff going on, and you know, you could be homeschooling. How many parents out there, particularly mums, talked about the stress and impact of having to homeschool on top of manage work and manage their job and all the things. So
I was certainly relieved to see my children go back to school.
Oh yeah. I think there'd be many agreeing with that. I saw something on Facebook last week. I think it was something, a memory flashed up for someone about homeschooling. She goes, I feel like I got PTSD from.
Yeah, it really, it's a bit triggering, isn't it? You know, you
Very
start
triggering.
to get, even my daughter said the other day, I think I want to be homeschooled. And I went, no, no chance. There is no chance on this earth.
Unless it's by someone else.
Absolutely.
So homeschool away from home.
Yeah, that's right. Leave home to homeschool. So I think that understanding, and this is, it's interesting when you say there's so many different things that you've unpacked and created systems around, but we talk about understanding what makes you tick and what makes your team tick, and how you can utilize a tool like that in order to be able to increase your communication and your influence of others. So what are some of the tips and techniques that you would suggest leaders lean into when it comes to maintaining relationships with their team when they're not there? Because we're not talking just even a setup around working from home as a normal structure, but sometimes people can be off work but still able to work. And you know, we want to get the best out of people and get them productive and engaged. So what are some of the key things that you see work really well?
Well, my team in particular, and I suppose they generally across 20 years, I've probably seen the full spectrum of people who like working from home and don't like working from home. So these are just things that I've tried that have worked. So my team like to get together face-to-face quarterly. So we do that. Some businesses need more than that. So that's just dependent on your business demands and what that requires. They do enjoy the occasional Zoom. They don't like to be on Zoom all the time. We do professional development together, whether that's on a Zoom session or whether that's face-to-face. We like going to seminars together. So that gives us opportunities to still connect with each other. I connect with every team member every quarter myself as a business owner. And that keeps me connected with everyone and understanding where they're going and what their goals are and whether they're happy with their workflow and what's happening for them. And that just keeps that communication two ways. And I also have a policy where people can approach me if they're having issues or problems. So there's still that virtual open door policy, I guess. But it is helpful to have the distance because that means I'm not constantly interrupted with phone calls and or getting knocks on the door, literally. I can respond to those things in a timely manner or in a space that I've allocated to respond to them. So it means I'm more productive. Also, I've got sometimes buddy systems work really well for people. So you can split your team up into triads of where people catch up socially during the week on Zoom or those sorts of things. We can also run things like random acts of kindness within the team, keeping those connections going. So there's all sorts of, there's lots of creative ideas. It won't work for everyone. And it is a little bit of understanding who your people are. And, some people are really tolerant of, getting online and having a glass of wine at the end of the week together. We did that a lot during COVID. Every Friday afternoon, we'd have what we called wine and cheese, which was WHINE. And we just have a debrief. Some people like to run a Zoom meeting at the beginning of the week to get everyone on track and, get the vibe high, and then they have a debrief at the end of the week to see how everyone went. We also have an in-house Facebook page, so we're keeping connected that way, and we're posting things all the time, little funny things, memes. We share wins with each other. Some people like to run WhatsApp groups. So there's lots of technology available now that previously wasn't available, and it's all at our disposal. So it's really only limited by your imagination and really what works for your people. People probably, some people won't like to get online and play online bingo or whatever it is that, is going on, guess the baby photo, or, it just depends.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I haven't done that one yet.
It really does, there's lots of opportunities there, but it just depends on your people, really. And I think that's the key. It's knowing who is on your team, what floats their boat, and playing to their strengths, and really just trying to keep that point of connection going.
That also lends me to another question that I have, Lisa, which is, what's your favorite piece of tech right now to help with this, to help with connection, to help with engagement, also transparency? You made a point earlier about, which I thought was really, really key, around a barrier for a lot of business owners or leaders is that trust. Will they perform? Will they be at their computer doing the job? And I love that you reflected on that the starting point is actually that connection, which is what links to the motivation, because that's certainly something that I hear a lot from leaders and business owners, is that concern around productivity. But the tech doesn't have to be around that. But what's your favorite piece of tech at the moment to help with really running a high-performance remote team?
Look, we operate on a cloud-based system, so we can monitor productivity through our case management system. We can see whether people are doing their work or not. We don't find we have to be on there all the time. We can see just from the figures. Numbers don't lie, right? If you know your business, you know your figures, you can see what's coming in the door, what's not coming in the door, if customers aren't getting, their needs aren't getting met, if timeframes aren't getting met. It's all there on the platform, on the dashboard. So we utilize that sort of system. Some businesses could use an equivalent case management system or similar. We also have, I have at times had my team split into units of work units, so a community team versus an insurance team. I've had team leaders attached to each of those businesses, and they've been responsible for quality assurance and checking reports and keeping the workflow going, and they would monitor, whether our KPIs are getting met in terms of timeframes and delivery of service in a timely manner. So we can pretty much keep an eye on things from a distance. We don't need to be ringing people and making sure they're at their desks. We don't need to be monitoring whether, you know, their keyboard's clicking away or anything like that. And I guess the reason why is because I've established a real culture of trust. An expectation that they are trustworthy until proven otherwise. And, you know, and if it doesn't look like things are getting done, we have the conversation. And we don't really need to be ringing and checking and making it obvious that we're watching what's going on. It just becomes obvious over time that things aren't getting done, and we just have the conversation. So it becomes a performance management issue rather than you can't work from home issue, because, you know, people can still waste a lot of time in an office environment, you know, and it normally it's the people who would normally waste time in an office anyway that would probably struggle with working from home. So
it's a great point.
Yeah.
It's a great point. And you can actually get technology. I think that was a joke, but I think you can actually get technology about clicks on a keyboard, etc. And that lends to this whole micromanagement piece.
I think a lot of government departments tend to use that sort of technology, and it just feels like Big Brother's watching you all the time, and it just doesn't have a really nice culture feel of trust. And I think trust begets trust. Once you start to feel like you're trusted, you act trustworthy, and yet you know, if you're not trusted, well, why disappoint? Let's be untrustworthy. So you know, I think I just set the bar at that level, and people have the respect for me and the way I operate, and I think that's another part that gels really nicely with business and work. Working remotely is that values alignment, that purpose-driven work that we do. When you engage a team that they buy into your brand, they buy into how you operate, they buy into your morals, your values, your purpose, they're more likely to be trustworthy, they're more likely to be productive. They get a kick out of getting results for people and getting a really good outcome for our customers and our clients. And then we motivate each other by sharing those wins and keeping the energy high. And so we're not invisible to each other. We are very much visible to each other because we're sharing those wins, we're sharing the struggles as well. They're not all wins, but we've got that sense of support in place, and that's a really nice culture to have as well. Because I think as remote work, there seems to be a bit of a myth that you don't feel supported and you can't have that level of connection with your peers. I beg to differ, but you do actually have to make an effort.
And there seems to be so many different ways that technology and, you know, systems and structure that allows that support. So what I'm really curious to know, Lisa, from your perspective as a business owner, what has it given you being able to run a business with a remote team? And you've done this for quite some time, but what are the benefits? If somebody's out there sort of sitting on the fence thinking they want to dip their toe, they're a little bit worried about it, but as a business owner, what is it for you that you get out of it?
Well, people thank me for offering them the opportunity to work the way we work. It fulfills their holistic being. As people, we are multifaceted. We're not just our work life. We are our family, our friends, our pets, you know, and there's lots of hobbies and interests that we like to engage in. And I think freeing up that time that we would usually use commuting, for instance, particularly in our major cities or even remote, like in rural regions where we do have to travel a fair way to get to work. I think freeing up that time is such an important commodity now. It always has been, I guess, but I think more now than ever that we're really busy. It's nice to have more time in our day, and to be able to do spend time with the people that are important to us, meet their needs. So I think for me, it's enabled me to be home for my children at important foundational moments in their lives. I've been able to serve on the canteen. I've been able to help with uniform shop. It's given me flexibility that I wouldn't have otherwise had available to me. It's enabled me to still build a business, a successful business, while meeting my personal and, you know, my purpose, what I believe to be my purpose. So, yeah, it's been really good. It has had its struggles, don't get me wrong. Being a business owner is not an easy road, as I'm sure you both know.
Everybody's nodding
and
along.
you still have your personnel issues and your recruitment issues and your you know, your people problems, but you know, that's business. It's a roller coaster ride, right? It's certainly not a cruise. So
Oh yes, you said that the other day and I really resonate. I think that's a really good way to look at business.
Yeah.
And when we expect it to be a cruise, whatever kind of business it is, then you know, you're kind of on that roller coaster on the dip, holding on for
and
dear life.
I think too, as a business owner of a remote business, it's just really important to get the supports around you. I mean, I think I've did my first 15 years pretty much on my own. And I did start to really struggle. I mean, I struggled through the 15 years, don't get me wrong, but I think it just got to the point where I was actually questioning whether to continue or not. And that's when I engaged my first mentor. And that really helped me to get the right people around me to be able to continue and to grow and to develop myself and to develop the business and to develop my people and my systems. And now, you know, with social media and all the things that come into play, it's just, yeah, I've seen a lot in that 20-year period. Yeah, it's amazing.
I think that's
so
a really
important to have the support around you is probably key.
Yes. Sorry,
from the outset.
Yeah.
Do it from the outset. Don't wait 15.
Don't wait 15.
Good idea.
Then you're all a bit crazy, really, but trying to do it on your own.
Oh, sorry, I keep
That's okay.
That's such an important point, because I think sometimes when we think remote, there's this, you mentioned this before, there's this almost this underlying isolated on your own. And you know what, even business owners that don't have a remote team, they can feel really isolated.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on 15 years of success without a mentor. And then like, good on you also for going, actually, something needs to change here, because it can be so lonely. I've got a question about the future. We've talked a lot about the past and how you've gotten to where you are and what's happening now. And I do think that whilst there's some businesses that are left behind because they're not fully embracing this hybrid workforce or remote workforce, there's a lot that are, and the normal kind of is that, you know, hybrid, maybe work from home 1 or 2 days a week, online, in office. That's kind of becoming the norm. What is the next frontier of growth when we look at remote working, when we look at breaking the cycles of norm in terms of business models and structure and success? What do you think is the next evolution, if you will? I know this is a pretty big question, but what do you think is next in this space?
Look, I would like to think that it would end up being more remote, given that we've got the technology now to be able to make it that way. I think the hybrid model is possibly just a middle ground, you know, to help us recover from the shock of being remote and then, or not being remote and then being remote and then going, okay, let's find a happy medium here. But I think as we evolve as the workforce evolves and as people start to become more comfortable with leading remotely, I would think that there will be more people wanting to work more time from home over the future. But yeah, who knows? Who's got the crystal ball? Don't know which way it's. I would hope that it wouldn't go back to the other way of I don't think it will. I think the horse has bolted. I think we've all had a taste of what's possible, and a taste of what we can achieve when we work flexibly. But I do think it's going to require a unique way of leading, a shift in mindset, a shift in paradigm. And yeah, if anyone needs help to do that, I'm here to help. So come on board.
For sure. Actually, that's a really great segue into the question that we ask at the end of every podcast of our guests is, what's one action that our listeners can take in the next 24 hours if they are considering moving into this remote workspace, or even if they're in remote workspace? What's one action that they could take that would break the cycle, as Nikki mentioned earlier, of thinking around how we should do business? So the mindset shift, the first step, what's one action?
Download my white paper.
Excellent.
Great action. Great action. Yes.
That's really quick and easy. It's a really quick and easy one. So last year I wrote a white paper on remote teamwork, mainly to provide a resource for people who are struggling with the concept and just need a remote team overview of how it can be done, and the things, and I think the model that I've worked with and the things that I've taken into account over the years. And it's just a collective piece on all my IP over the years, and the practical strategies I've put in place. But I think open your mind, just open your mind to the possibilities, because the possibilities are there if you want to see them. I think it's too easy just to close off and go, oh, that's all too hard. If the workforce is actually asking for this, and I think now that there are things in place at Fair Work Australia and things, I think legislative requirements that we consider as employers, that we need to be thinking more openly about this, and considering what is possible within our businesses, what can be done remotely, to be able to offer people the opportunity to live their lives and work the way they want to. So I think in terms of retaining your talent and saving you costs in training and recruitment and all those things, if your workforce is seriously wanting this, I think you'd be silly not to consider it.
Absolutely. Lisa, it has been such a fabulous conversation and really opening up this space and thinking around remote work. So thank you so much. We will put the link to your white paper in the show notes, but also if people wanted to find out more or get in touch with you to have a conversation, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent.
Yep. So seek me out there. I'm posting lots of different things, and there's downloads, and you can DM me through there. That's probably the easiest way.
Fabulous. All right. We will also include those links in the show notes. And we want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fabulous conversation.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Go and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.